Welcome to my Fire Emblem Engage Maddening tier list. So we're going to be looking at the units and placing them on a tier list in relation to how good they are, how much they contribute, what kind of builds that they can run, like what kind of options they have. So to begin, we have Alchrist. I'll put him in A tier. Essentially, his Luna passive allows his high dex, which he has pretty good dex growth. It allows him to bypass half of the enemy's res or defense. And this is pretty good because you can get his dex to like 30 to 50 by mid game, and he'll actually be bypassing a lot of armor or res. So that's just pure upside. Now, 30 to 50%, that's not guaranteed. But if he hits something twice or, over the course of a match, he'll just deal bonus damage. So it's one of those things where on average, it will help you. It's kind of like having like 30% crit. Like when you crit, 1 in 3 enemies, great. You just killed a thing in one hit, and now you can devote resources to something else. So you kind of have to play with this mindset of, if this triggers, cool, I can use fewer resources on killing this thing since it's been one shot. If this doesn't trigger, I have a plan. So that's kind of how you have to play him. He could be viable in other things. I think Luna is such a powerful skill. You probably should just spec into that. I don't really know what else you'd want to put him on. Maybe like Bow Knight or Sniper or something like that. But Sniper is very similar to his unique like advanced class. So I would just go with his advanced class. Alear is actually good when you feed Alear. Alear is definitely a solid unit with basic investment and leveling. Like if you continually level Alear and give Alear a good forged weapon with an engraving, you can become literally invincible through avoid tanking, or if you're just playing the game normally, you can become very high dodge rate. So Alear can hard carry and is a solid unit and can solo the game, so you can't do that if you're not S tier. Alfred, I'd say he's like B tier. You can invest in him if you want. His standout is like his strength growth, and he has okay speed. But aside from that, you have to level him up before you really start to see results because he starts out kind of weak. But outside of that, he's okay. Same thing with Amber, kind of a similar situation. You can run these if you want to. They're not going to hard carry your playthrough, but they're decent. Anna, solid S tier. You want to get her to level 10 as soon as possible. Get her into advanced class and then second seal, or you can second seal her into mage. Either way, you want to get her on magic because she has base 50% magic growth. You can put her on high priest. She'll have 75% magic growth and absurd luck growth. Or you can put her on sage, and then she'll have 80% magic growth and still pretty high luck growth. The sage is the more offensive route. Like it's definitely more geared towards killing things, but the high priest is definitely more geared towards economy and utility. So high priest might be the play because you get insane luck growth. She has a base 45% luck growth. She can make you a lot of money and kill a lot of things. She's actually a very solid unit. Definitely S tier. 80% magic growth is nothing to dismiss. My Anna in my second playthrough is absolutely insane. She kills almost everything she attacks. She's as good as my Ivy was on my first playthrough, who was a hard carry, except her speed is a little bit higher at base. She does need to get some build over time. So she does want the luck for the trigger, for the gold trigger. The higher her luck, the more often you get 500 gold and you kill things. At 30%, like a 30% trigger rate, she was able to make me 3,000 gold in chapter 16 alone. So I can only imagine how much she's going to make me once it's like 50%. And that's just like in a mainline mission. I believe it triggers on paralog enemies that keep infinitely spawning. So you might be able to infinite farm on Anna. But even if you don't, she'll make you a ton of money and kill things easily. And she's a very solid mage. So I'd say she's an S tier. Bukaron, he's a decent backup. You can use him if you want. Bunei, he's okay. He has low speed, so he's never going to double. He can hit things for some damage, but he's not like a hard carrier or anything of note. The B tiers, they're just like units you can run if you like them, and they're viable, but they're not gonna break the game in any way. Celine, I would say she's A tier. She has good speed growth and okay magic growth. You can put her on Sage or keep her on her unique class. Her unique class is kind of interesting because it gets sword, staves, and tomes. So it gets like 3 things, which is very unique. Very few things get that. She might be one of the only, if not the only one. The swords aspect of it, her strength is usually kind of low. So usually it's going to be like 11 sword. But weirdly, she has slightly better strength growth than magic. So in fixed mode, you'll notice she gets like more strength levels, but her base magic stat is a little bit higher. So she does still have respectable magic. Honestly, I'm probably going to reclass her onto Sage so she can get that sweet plus 30% magic growth that Sage provides. And I think she has 55% base speed, which is absolutely amazing. Units with over 50% speed on fixed mode tend to be able to keep up with enemies in terms of speed. And at the very least, will just not get doubled by most enemies, which is usually more than enough to survive counterattack or to initiate an attack on an enemy. So pretty good unit. Chloe, I would say, is S tier. If you don't do anything to her, like if you just hand her a steel lance and then upgrade it like 1 to 3 times in early game and then put an engraving on it, she will consistently one round most enemies on the map, aside from like armored units. And then if you also put Sigurd on her, she hard carries the entire early game. In my chapter 11 Maddening guide, I have a strategy where you just have her, without an emblem ring, dive into the enemy backline and just start killing them all with a specific weapon. And I show which weapon that is. It's a steel lance +3 with a specific engraving. And then you put void +10 on her, and she becomes a dodge tank that doubles everything, and she can just kill tons of things effortlessly. And then she scales well into the end game because she has insanely high speed. And speed equals dodge rate. Speed equals 1 speed equals 2 avoid. So as she scales her speed on Griffin Knight, she becomes like dodgier and dodgier, and she just passively avoids a lot of damage and doesn't need healed nearly as often as other units. She also consistently doubles, and her build, it's not like heavy. She doesn't have like a high build, but she has enough build to consistently double with an upgraded steel lance, which is all you need. And it works all the way up until the end game. And if you want to use something heavier on her, you can. She also is a great Flame Lance user once you get it, because she has high magic stat, like reasonably high magic stat, and she can bypass armor. Like once you get Flame Lance on her, she can kill like almost anything. And she might not one round some of the super late game at like level enemies, but she'll do double them for good damage and get them below half. So still really solid. Definitely S tier. She can carry your early game easily, and I show it in guides. Citrine, I would say she's high B tier. She has low speed, and low speed means you don't double. And other people have been saying this, and this is something I've noticed. The further along in a playthrough you are, the faster enemies get, and eventually she gets to a point where her speed just falls behind and she can't double like armored units, and that's just as bad. You need your mages fast. They need to be able to one round or at least deal like a ton of damage to armored units, because armored units can be annoying. And if you have mages to kill them and the mages can't double that unit, they're going to get that enemy down from like 70 to like 40 health instead of like 10. So that's a huge difference. So these mages are a little bit faster and therefore better, in my opinion. Clan, I would say, is D tier. He has 10% magic growth. He's a mage with 10% base magic growth. The highest his magic growth can get is 40% with Sage. And even then, that's sad. It's just not good. There's really nothing else. He has speed, but so does Anna. He's basically objectively worse than Anna in every conceivable way. She gives you money. She has better growth. She has 80% magic growth on Sage. She's just a better unit. Diamants, I would say he's like B tier. Some people swear by him, not too many. A few people in the comments have been like, oh, I love this dude. He does this, that, and the other thing. His bases are okay. His stats, his growths are okay. He has like surprisingly low strength growth. His strength growth is 30% and his speed is 40, which is okay, but 40% speed as a base class, I like my units to have like 45 or higher. And, I want them to be over 50. So it's going to be hard for him to be on like certain classes and be over 50% growth and also have the strength growth. Because right now he has kind of like low strength growth and kind of below average speed growth, or maybe average speed growth. And he doesn't have anything that stands out. And you really want standout strength and magic or speed. And then you can compensate for one or the other. But generally you want speed. and he just doesn't have it. He's not too slow. He's just like average speed. These are emblem rings, so we'll skip those. Eddie, Ate, whatever. I'd say she's like C. She's definitely better than him, but she's like very easily killed. She has low defenses, low speed, gets one rounded very easily in early game. And if you put her on an advanced class, I think she still has low max health and low speed, so she can still get one rounded. She can basically get one rounded throughout the entire playthrough. She might actually be D tier. I might be being generous here by putting her in C, but yeah, I don't think she's very good. Fogato, I would say he's like B tier. So I've actually run him a lot. I've run him since I got him on my first Maddening run, and he was okay, but he starts to kind of fall off strength-wise, and he eventually gets to a point in endgame where unless you overfeed him levels and experience, he's not going to be able to deal damage or meaningful damage, and he just kind of chips things with kind of poor accuracy. So he's basically a worse Alchemist who can at least maintain accuracy with his absurd dex growth and maintain damage with his passive proc. So he just doesn't have that. So he's a little bit better, I would say. Fram, let's say she's like high C tier. She doesn't really bring anything to the table. She has decent speed, but she's on like a punching class that uses stabs. And honestly, I think Chi Adept is kind of a meme. I haven't really heard of too many people running it and having success in Maddening. The problem with it is it usually has low strength, so even if you were to punch someone, it doesn't deal good damage unless it's a unit with high strength, in which case it might be okay. But she has low strength growth. Her strength growth is 30, which is not the worst, but you really need... I think her base stats are terrible too. Let me pull these up. Let's see, FE Engage base stats. Saren's Forest. Let's pull this up. All right, Fram's starting strength, 3. So even if you wanted to punch something with her, she has 3 starting strength. Good luck. Starting speed, 7. That's a Lear's starting speed, though, to be fair. But starting strength of 3, that's not going to cut it. There's no way. There's no way she's going to level up to meaningful strength unless you do some kind of manipulation or get lucky. All right, so Gold Mary, I would say, is also C. She has low damage, low speed. She has bad speed growth. She's on a hero, which is like a whatever class. Some of the backup classes I'm not so sure about, to be honest. Like I know the chain attack thing. I understand it. I've used it myself. I think it's overrated. I think people get excited by seeing a bunch of things happen, but a bunch of low damage hits for 80%, while it can be good, can also be achieved just by having good units that just kill things. So I would rather just do that. And also chain attacks don't work on enemy phase, so there's definitely better strategies out there that are way stronger than chain attack spam. And the problem with a lot of the chain attack units is that they're landlocked 5 move units, which is not that good. Now, if you're a Sage with Canter and you're landlocked, that's not nearly as bad because you can poke out at up to 3 range. Or if you use Byleth and pop your Engage, you can use Thyrsus. So like you've got flexibility. Even if you don't do the Byleth pop, you can just hit him at 3 range with like Thorons and stuff like that. Hit him at 2 range with spells, Canter back, and kind of like bob and weave. With Hero, it doesn't have the consistency of a Mystic unit. Mystic also ignores avoid bonuses. So I just don't think it's that good of a class in general. But she also has low strength and low speed and bad speed growth. Gold Mary's speed growth is actually 25%, and her strength is 30. So, and weirdly, her defense is 55%. I don't know what's up with this chick. Weird stats. Hortensia, S tier, one of the best healers in the game, has range +1 on basic stabs, which is very nice. She can conserve staff uses as part of her passive. I think trigger equals dex %. So if she has like 30 dex, she has a 30% chance to not consume a staff charge. That's amazing because some stabs are expensive, and you can conserve. If you can conserve like warps, that's pretty huge. Like there's a finite amount of warps and rewarps in the game. If you can conserve those, even just randomly, like that's still nice. But that's not even why she's good. She's good because high speed, high speed growth, can actually one round some enemies, or at the very least double some like enemy armor and do damage. Unlike someone, but she's just really good. She's flying, good speed, good base speed, good speed growth. She has low max health, but that can be offset by giving her an emblem ring that gives her health, like max health, or using a seraph robe on her. But she shouldn't even be seeing combat. But if you want her to see combat, she can. You just have to fix her health, which is not hard to do. Or you could even just run a health plus like 7 passive on her, inherit skill with Canter, and then she's fine. You can do that. That's another way to do it. So you don't even have to like burn a seraph robe. Ivy, easy S tier. The 2 dragon sisters are absolutely insane. They're the only flying mages you can get, and as a result, they're some of the most flexible units in the game. Ivy with Lyn is a hard carry S tier like setup. She gets speed taker and starts stacking speed, and then just starts like one rounding everything with alacrity before it could even counterattack. My Ivy was so good on my first playthrough that she could one round worms from full health by herself, and it was absolutely ridiculous. She had that high of magic, and she also has void. She has 2 things that work off of her magic. She has Void Grasp, which randomly causes her to deal more damage. I think it's like 20 to 30% chance for her spells just to hit harder. And then she also has the hit plus 20 if she's fought something before, which is great for bosses or dancing. So if you like attack something, then dance and then attack it again, it's just more accurate. So she has all these tools, and she's just absolutely insane. And then Hortensia, not as much damage as Ivy, but she can use all the stabs. She has good speed. She has good speed, flying, magic. It's just pure upside. And then staff range increase. Just so much on these units. It's ridiculous. Jade, I would say Jade is like here. I think that's fair. She's like a solid B tier. I tried her on General. She was okay. I tried her on Great Knight. She was okay. She's not carrying. Tanks on Maddening very often. It's either like early to mid game, they're tanking everything and it's great and it works, or it's mid to late game, like the second half of mid game, and you realize that all the enemies have like hammers and armor slayers and magic and crazy abilities and high stats, or they have like a silver great axe that hits like 70 damage, and it's like, oh, that 40 armor is cute, you're still taking 30. It's like Maddening does not mess around. So while armors can be good early game, I think tanking in general just falls off unless you use emblem rings and emblem ring strats, or like tile manipulation with like obstructs and fires and like fire and stuff like that, or Corrin, like stuff like that. So I think tanking falls off mid to end game. So I'd say overall she's like a B tier, and her low speed prevents her from tanking mages. Mages one round her. Same thing with Louis. They both get one rounded by mages, which is annoying to play around because, funny enough, Chloe and Ivy have like pretty high defensive stats for both defense and res, but their fast speed prevents them from getting doubled, which usually causes them to be more tanky than the actual tank. So unironically, these units tend to out-tank tanks on Maddening mode endgame, just because they don't get hit twice. Like, if I get hit for a 40 and I have 45 health, I live. But if I get hit for a 40 and it gets reduced to 30, I'm taking 60 damage if I get doubled, so I'm dead. Like the difference in mitigation between these units is not substantial enough. Like the speed is better than the damage mitigation. That's the point I'm trying to make. Jean, he's an S tier. I haven't run him personally, but I understand how he works. You can easily snowball him into any unit archetype. His passive allows him to get double bonus growths on any class. Some classes provide insane growths. So if you put him on Sage, he would be 80% magic growth. But unlike Anna, all right, so here are his base growth. So let's go to Jean really quick. I have their growths up on the other screen. So where are you? He's in the second page? Oh, okay, he's in the bottom. All right, so his speed growth is 40. So here's his growth. 50 health, 50% health, 20% strength, 20% magic, 35% dex, 40% speed, and then 25% luck and defense, 5% build, and then 20% res. All right, so if he goes into a Sage, for example, like just for the sake of argument, he gets plus 30% magic growth on top of his 20. But then it gets doubled. So the Sage gets doubled to 60, so he has 80% growth. And there's no speed on Sage, so you probably wouldn't want him on Sage. Probably Mage Knight would be better. Mage Knight gets 5% speed, which would be doubled to 10, and then the magic is still 25%, which would be doubled to 50. And then the res and the luck and the def would get multiplied as well. That would be decent on him. I think he wouldn't make a good Wolf Knight. You want things that have like 15 plus percent on the stats you want to hit. So for example, he would be an okay Paladin because it has 15% strength and speed, which would double to 30 and 30. So he'd be 50% strength, 50% speed, which is okay, but there's definitely better extremes you can push him into. Oh, here we go, like Warrior. Weirdly, he would make a good Warrior. 20% strength growth on Warrior would be doubled to 40, putting him at 60% strength growth. The 15% on Warrior would be doubled to 30, which would put him at 70% speed growth. So he would start snowballing. I think he would make a good Wyvern, if I recall correctly, like a good Wyvern Knight. Maybe Griffin. Maybe he would be a good Griffin Knight. I don't know. The thing with Wyvern is that's just his 5 speed. So he'd be 50% speed and then 60% strength, which isn't bad. That's actually pretty respectable. But he can snowball hardcore in certain aspects. But it seems like Anna would be a better mage than him because she has better base speed. So that's something to consider. But he can snowball in like, different directions. And he does require investment, but he should, in theory, be able to be very strong if used correctly. All right, Kagetsu, easy S tier. He just starts off with insane stats, and he has good growths. There's no downside to running him. His starting stats, he has 30% growth in strength, and then 50% on speed and dex, 60% in health, but he starts out in Swordmaster, so he actually has 40% strength growth, and plus 20 speed, so 70% speed growth. Now, if you wanted to switch him to like Griffin Knight, he would make a good Griffin Knight, he would make a good Paladin, he would make a good Wolf Knight, because all of those give strength and speed. Maybe not Wolf Knight because it has lower speed, but Griffin Knight, he would be 40% strength growth with the 70% speed, which speed is insane. Speed is avoiding, speed is doubling. You could also put him on Wyvern to get him to 50% strength growth and then 55% speed growth. That would be solid as well. He has a lot of options. He can go into a bunch of different things because of his speed. You could put him on Thief if you wanted. That would be viable. He can be on a bunch of different things. He could probably even stay as a Swordmaster and he'd be fine. But he has pretty good bases, pretty good stats. Lapis, I would say she's like low-end B tier. She's definitely better than her, as far as I can tell, because she at least has speed, but she lacks damage. And another thing working against her is her low starting stats and her low health pool. So even if she has good speed and can double, she tends to die easily because she has very low health. And I've encountered this on 2 fixed Maddening mode runs on different classes. I tried her on Griffin and I tried her on Halberdier. And on Halberdier, she can actually deal meaningful damage, but it's definitely tricky to get it to work. So it's just not really worth it. Linden, I've seen some of his builds. I'd say he's high A tier. I don't want to put him in S because it requires so much setup to get him up and running, but he can get this like double lightning crit build where you need a specific ring that doubles it allows the lightning spell specifically, so not L lightning or Thoron. The lightning spell can double, and then he has to get like crit from his passive, crit boost on the lightning spell itself from an engraving, and then he has to have an ability that increases crit when he's low health. So then he stays like kind of medium health and just keeps critting things. So you can do that if you want. It's pretty good. It's viable. Louis. Honestly, I'm going to put him at high B. So same thing with the Jade problem. It's like the low speed, when he gets hit, unless you power level him, which seems like a waste because like what does he accomplish? Like he never kills things. He can put damage on things on counterattack, but late game Maddening doesn't really give you that many opportunities to do stuff like that. there are still opportunities, but they're not as common as they are early game. Early game, he's a beast and he stomps. Mid to late game, I feel like him and Jade fall off hardcore because if his defense is high enough for enemies not to hit him, they literally ignore him. So then the upside of him counterattacking things is no longer present. But if the weak enemies can damage him, the strong enemies can really hurt him. So either he's snowballed so hard that weaker enemies ignore him and that he tanks stronger enemies, or he's not snowballed and weaker enemies can hurt him slightly, allowing him to counterattack them. But then stronger enemies can also hurt him and potentially one round him. And there's always problems like running into Levin swords, flame lances, magic, armor slayers, stuff like this. This is just like a constant threat you have to watch out for on these units. And honestly, it's not really worth it. You're better off just having fast units that can just not get doubled, in my opinion. Mavier, I'd say he's like higher B tier. When you get him, he's decent, but he doesn't have high speed. He's just kind of like, whatever. You get him for like a few chapters and he's okay. He's definitely not a hard carry and he's not bad. And he can use stabs, so he has some utility, so he's decent. Marin, weirdly enough, A tier is kind of empty. That'll change pretty soon, I think, but I kind of want to put her in S tier, but I don't think her strength is there. Her speed is insane. I think I'll put her in high A tier. I think that's fair. I think Marin is a high A tier. So as soon as you get her, she's cracked, and she's really good. As time goes on, she starts to lose damage, so she needs like her weapons upgraded. And if your economy's good, she's S tier. If your economy's good and her weapons are upgraded, with her fast speed, she can really destroy things easily, and she's S tier. So I would say it depends. If you're running Anna and you have good economy, S tier. If you're not running Anna and she doesn't have upgraded weapons, she's just A tier. She's definitely a solid unit, high speed, decent strength, really good unit. You can reclass her to Wyvern to increase her strength growth, or you can just keep forging her weapons. All right, Pandreo, I think that's how you say his name. I'd say he's A tier. He's about as good as Selene. He's like he has like 50 or 55% speed growth base, and that on a mage is good because you need to be able to double armor. One of your jobs as a sage in Fire Emblem is nuking down enemy armored units so that your other physical units who can't touch them or put a dent in them can kill other things like the low and medium armored units. And he can kill your sages, can heal, use utility stabs, nuke down things that are weak to magic. That's their whole existence. That's why they're here. That's why you run sages. So if you can't double those armors and kill them or almost kill them, you're going to lose out to the mages who can. And he does that. And he also increases his own hit and avoid based on how many things are near him, so that's pure upside. Panette, I would say it's like here. I feel like she wants to run like a crit build because her speed is bad and her speed growth isn't that good. You can put her on Wolf Knight and it's okay. And it starts to fix her speed. You'd want to do this immediately. Or you just double down and just go for the crit axe build, which could be viable on her. It might be A tier if you forge like a killer axe or something and just keep increasing and maybe engrave it with crit. Her problem though is that she has low defenses, low speed, and her health is okay, but enemies hit really hard on Maddening, and her lack of defense does not matter. Does not. Let me rephrase this. Her lack of defense and high health does not matter because of her lack of defense. Her lack of defensive stats means that and the lack of speed means that she will get doubled and it will not be reduced by much. So enemies hit her very hard with all forms of combat, or with all forms of damage type, right? Like she takes high magic damage, she takes high physical damage. She has high max health, but she has low speed. So her damage is not mitigated and she always gets doubled. She gets one-rounded super easily. So if you can play around that, she can be okay. But a lot of these B tiers, you'll notice, are slow. And the one that isn't, she just has low max health. And even though she usually doesn't get doubled, she gets one shot a lot. And that's just bad. Rosado, I'm going to put Rosado at low A. But there is like an asterisk next to that. Use spears on him. He actually has decent speed growth, but you don't see it because he's usually using axes, and he starts off with like a spear and then a bunch of axes. Use lances on him, like a forged steel lance, to get the weight down, and he can actually handle it. And then he can either double or not get doubled. So that actually could be good, and maybe he actually makes a better Griffin Knight, because Griffin Knight is plus 20 speed. So let me look at his bases really quick. Rosado. Base strength of 45. Base speed of 45. I think he wants to be a Griffin Knight. 45 strength is more than enough to compete, to be relevant as a Griffin Knight. And I think his starting strength is decent. It's higher than most units that want to go into Griffin Knight. But he needs a speed increase. So putting him on Griffin Knight gets him to 65 base speed, 65%, which on fixed mode is 6.5 speed levels per 10 level ups. It's guaranteed. So over 20 level ups, he'll be plus 13 speed, which is substantial, and will keep him doubling things and preventing him from getting doubled himself. It's all about speed, if we're being honest. This game's Maddening mode heavily favors fast units because getting doubled is a death sentence in most cases. And defensive stats don't matter if you get hit twice. Like if you have damage but get hit twice, it's the same thing as taking full damage. So, usually. Okay, Saphir. Definitely not A tier. I'd say she's like high B. I think she's actually decent. She's a warrior. Warrior is actually not bad. It has good growths. It has some speed. The problem with it is it's axes, and axes are heavy. So axes weight tends to negate any speed a unit gains. So Rosado on spears makes him faster because spears are lighter. So the build of the spear, or the build of the unit and the weight of the spear work together. Whereas with the axe weight, I think he has like 8 or 9 build. He can kind of handle it, but it's still too heavy and it slows him down. Then he gets doubled, and he gets one-rounded by a bunch of things, and it's unfortunate. With Saphir, the longbow, using a longbow on backup is decent for chip damage. If she has a longbow, she shoots down a flyer or something, and then other dudes get a bunch of extra chip damage. It's decent. I'd say it's like a high B tier, and that she can use the axe if she needs to target something. The dancer, S tier. Probably the best unit in the game, because dancing. So when dancing just refreshes a unit, it's usually really good, especially in games where there's only a handful of good units, which this is one of those games. So that being said, what makes him the best, I think the best unit in the game, is the fact that he refreshes and you get extra stuff. So it would be one thing, let's say you have 2 units, Unit A and Unit B. Let's say this is Unit A, this is Unit B, right? So Anna and Alir. So here's your 2 units, right? Let's say you can run one or the other, right? And let's say they're exactly, actually, let's do this. Here's Unit A and Unit B. They're literally the same unit, same stats, same everything. So you could run duplicates of them. However, if you just run him, he gives you the AoE heal on turn start. It heals 10% to all things within 2 tiles. That's free upside. So it's the same thing as running 2 of them plus the healing. He boosts your stats. He boosts your speed, which could potentially lead to you doubling when he dances you. So that's another upside. And then if you put quality time on him, he also AoE heals adjacent when he waits after dancing. So, like if you have cancer, you have to wait, or it just happens automatically. So it's literally the same as running 2 of these, but you get 2 AoE heals and stat increase for dancing. It's literally pure upside. There's no downside to it at all. And his speed is good, so he never gets doubled. His defensive stats are good. His health is good. He can literally tank hits. And if you want to, you can engrave one of his weapons with a void. You can put a void on one of his weapons that's equipped, and then when enemies go to attack him, he's a dodge tank. You can literally make him invincible. He's pure upside. There's literally, in this example where you have 2 copies of the exact same unit, he just gives you free healing plus stat increase, plus speed increase, which could lead to doubling, which leads to killing things. So it's literally just better than a copy of your best unit, objectively. You can't refute it. It's undeniable. And then when he gets Canter, it's crazy, and when he gets Canter Plus, it's even crazier, because then he gets to fly out of there. He can move in and then fly out 2 to 3 spaces. So, Tamara, I would say she's a solid A tier around here. Similar to Alchrist, she has the Sandstorm build that triggers off of Dex, and you can get her Dex to like 30 to 50. And Sandstorm does do meaningful damage, and she actually is a high speed unit. So if you hand her an upgraded Steel Lance, she will mess stuff up. Like she will stab dudes twice, and then if you can get a Brave Lance on her that's upgraded, she could potentially quad, and that increases Sandstorm like trigger rate. And Sandstorm can also trigger on like a Corrin or something, I'm pretty sure. So if she uses like Corrin's Torrential whatever, it can trigger Sandstorm and scale the damage. But the main thing is just stabbing things multiple times, then triggering Sandstorm. With Steel Lance +5, she can get like crit +20. So she has like 5 to 15% crit rate on most enemies, 30 to 50% Sandstorm, depending on your dex. So you have 2 chances to deal bonus damage from the crit roll and then from the Sandstorm. And you can also Sandstorm crit, which deals even more damage. And I have seen that happen. So she's actually pretty solid. Now, what you want to do when you get her, immediately promote her to Picket, and then she has increased growth rates. So that's what you do. And then invest in her a little bit. Vander, high internal level, which means he levels up slow. Bad base stats for an advanced unit. Bad growths. Literally no upside using him. Just like straight up bad. Veil, I'd say she's like low A. You get her late. She's decent. She can never double because her speed's too low. By the time you get her, you don't have enough time to level her up enough. Unless you find some kind of exploit, in which case go nuts. But outside of that, she's basically like Anna, but not as good. Because Anna, you can snowball her and get her good speed from the level ups. And she gets insane magic growth and usually doubles things as well as makes you money. But she's decent. Like, she hits pretty hard. She hits reasonably hard. She's not going to double, though. But you get her late, and if you need to plug her in instead of, like, if you lost a unit or something, someone dies, whatever, you can just use her on your team. She's fine. She's serviceable. But she does hit pretty hard. She hits hard enough that I would say she makes it in the A tier. She's definitely better than Saphir. Yunaka, I would say she's like low A tier. You can run her. She's viable. She does thief things. She throws daggers. She avoids in trees. She gets the crits. However, there is a better thief, and he is an S tier. So Zelkov. So someone actually asked me about him earlier today, and I made a simple argument. And here's the argument. So when you get Yunaka, she has 8 strength and 12 speed, right? I'm looking at her stats right now. Those are her starting stats. When you get Zelkov, he has 15 strength, 7 higher, and he has 19 speed. End of argument. That's all I have to say. She has, so growth rates. Let's talk growth rates now. So base stats, he's a few chapters after her. Keep that in mind. He's like 5 chapters after her. You just get him for free. He's insane. Same thing with Kagetsu. Crazy units. Really strong. So growth rates. Let's talk growth rates. So Zelkov's growth rates. Zelkov's speed, 35%. And then Thief gives you +15. So he's at 50% speed growth. Strength growth, 15%. Or I'm sorry, 35%. And then strength growth on speed, 10. So he's at 45% strength growth. And then for Yunaka, you have the same strength growth. And then she has 10 more speed. However, even though she's 50 or 60% speed versus his 50, so it's a 10% difference, he starts out with way higher speed. He starts out +7 speed on her. So even if she were to level up to his level, which would be almost impossible to do because he's level 17, but even if she were to somehow gain 7 speed points, by the time you get him, you would have to dump so many kills into her to achieve this that it wouldn't be worth it, because you could be power leveling Alir, you could be power leveling Anna, you could be power leveling Chloe, you could be power leveling Jean. These are all better units to dump XP into than Yunaka, because for free, you just get an assassin that already has good speed growth, and good starting strength. He starts out with good enough strength that he can just one-round a lot of stuff with daggers. So there's really no downside to using him. The other thing, too, is you don't get steel daggers until you get him. So, like, you can't even give her a good weapon to use. Like, she just has to use, like, upgraded iron daggers, which get outclassed by silver and steel pretty quickly, and he starts off with steel. So there's so many arguments against her, but if you do decide to use her, she still is good, but you get everything she provides, but for free. Same thing with like him versus Lapis, because they're kind of both like sword units. He just has, here are Kagetsu's starting stats: 35 health, 17 strength on a sword unit. Starting stats, chapter 11, 22 dex, 22 speed. That's crazy. 22 speed, his starting speed. Rosado, who you get in chapter 16, 21 speed. This dude has higher speed. Veil's speed is 23, and you get her at like the end of chapter 21 or 22. This dude has one less speed than a literal endgame, like pre-promote. Mavier, 22 speed. He has the same speed as a dude you get like right near the end of the game. He has, I think, he's like tied for second highest starting speed, but you get him super early. So he is definitely one of the best units by far, just because of his speed alone, even if he had like 10 strength. Like just having 22 speed, like you could fix 10 strength. Give him a forged weapon, put him on a class with strength growth. You just need a few points of strength before you start dealing damage. But he has 17 strength. Now, if you look at all the other units, like Alir, 7 strength or 6 strength, Vander, this is starting. 11. Clan has 1 starting strength. Fram has 3. Then Yunaka's is 8. Yunaka's really being compared to Zelkov, who's 15, but Kagetsu has 17 starting strength. Honestly, he's probably one of the best units that they just hand you. Like a lot of these are. And then Sami, let's put him in A tier just to even it out. So here is the tier list. Feel free to agree or disagree. Let me know why. I'm open to, having my opinion changed. This isn't concrete. If you have strong arguments for a build like that works in Maddening for any of these units, especially like any of these that are like on the lower tier, I'd like to hear it. I think a lot of these are pretty solid. There's definitely a lot of S tier units. Now, I haven't run these two. I've used him for a few chapters, but just looking at their stats, it's so obvious they're insane. Like the speed growth and the high starting speed gets you doubling things and probably keeps you doubling things throughout the entire run of the game. And, once you get ahead on speed in relation to enemies and you stay ahead of them, you're just constantly out damaging them. And especially if you like break an enemy and then have one of these units attack them to kill it, that's huge. But yeah, like speed is one of the best stats in the game, if not the best stat in the game. And you can kind of see that in this tier list because pretty much all the units that are slow, she's not slow, but she just doesn't really do anything. All the units that are either slow or weird or bad, like slower, these are like kind of slower units. They can still be good and they can still be like meaningful, but they're definitely not as good as like the faster units who can also deal damage, because it just makes your life easier when you can deal damage and not get doubled and counterattack. And also I found that like Ivy, weirdly, because she has like 19 physical defense when you get her, like it's pretty high, and she also has high res. She's like tankier than like Jade or Louis. It's really weird because she has high speed. She has high enough speed where she doesn't get doubled, especially with Lynn. And she just like has good defensive stats for some reason and can just tank. It's just very strange. She's a very powerful unit. Same thing with Chloe. Like these two are very good tanky flyers. But these are all in here for different reasons. I would say maybe John's like on the lower end because you have to invest in him so much. These are just like really good as soon as you get them. There's no downside. Someone made a strong argument for his case, so I actually agree with that. His Luna build, because I've been using Sandstorm and it's been decent. Like 1 in 3 hits basically does extra damage. So over the course of a battle, she just deals extra damage. So that's the way to look at it instead of like, I hope I Sandstorm. And maybe sometimes you make those plays just to see if you can get it, and then sometimes you do. But yeah, that's it for this one. Definitely like and subscribe. Let me know if you agree on these or if you disagree on any of these and why. I'm open to arguments. I'm not like convinced this is 100% accurate. This is just as much of like based on what I know about the game at this point in time. This is what I think about these characters and where they place. This is definitely going to shift over time, I'm sure. Maybe some of these move up or down as we discover new builds. That's totally fine. The game's been out for I think over 2 weeks by this point. Maybe almost 3 weeks. It's hard to say. I've just been making so much content for this game. It's hard to tell how much time has passed. So maybe it's approaching 3 weeks. But yeah, thanks for checking this out. Peace.